For centuries, humanity had lived in the shadows of the stars. Earth had been a small, insignificant planet in the vast ocean of the universe, home to a species that had, until recently, not even ventured beyond its own solar system. The human race had long been ignored, dismissed by the more advanced civilizations that inhabited the galaxy. But that had all changed. In the year 2368, the first alien ships arrived in Earth's orbit. They came from the Zalthar Empire, a technologically superior race that had been expanding their influence across the galaxy for millennia. Their fleet, enormous and intimidating, blocked out the stars with its sheer size. Their demands were simple: Earth would surrender its sovereignty and join the Empire as a vassal, or the entire planet would be destroyed. The Zalthar had underestimated humanity. They had not expected the resistance. They had assumed that Earth would bend to their will, just as so many other worlds had before. What they didn't realize was that humanity had something the Zalthar didn't: an unyielding will to survive and the capacity for innovation in the face of overwhelming odds. The invasion was swift. The Zalthar fleet obliterated the world's defenses in a matter of days. Cities fell, and governments crumbled under the weight of their superior firepower. But the people of Earth fought back in ways the Zalthar never anticipated. They underestimated us. Amidst the chaos, a young military strategist named Captain Lila Armstrong rose to prominence. She had been a part of Earth's defense force, but like many others, she had assumed the fight was hopeless. Yet in the heart of Earth's crumbling command center, she formulated a bold plan, a counterattack that would cripple the Zalthar Empire's hold on the planet. Lila's plan was audacious. It relied not on brute force, but on intelligence, stealth, and the use of Earth's limited resources in ways that no one had considered. Her first step was to gather a resistance movement. What had once been isolated groups of survivors now coalesced into a well-organized force under her leadership. They began sabotaging the Zalthar's infrastructure, striking critical supply lines, and reclaiming key cities from the invaders. The Zalthar Empire, with all its advanced technology, had no idea how to handle an insurgency of this scale. Their armies were designed for domination, not for the guerrilla tactics humanity was using. As Earth's resistance grew stronger, the Zalthar found themselves caught in a war they never planned for, and they soon realized that their overconfidence had led to a crucial miscalculation. They underestimated us. The tipping point came during the Battle of Valiant Ridge, a major confrontation in the remnants of North America. Lila Armstrong had managed to rally the remaining forces into a unified offensive. With limited access to Earth's old weaponry and salvaged alien technology, they launched a surprise attack on one of the Zalthar's primary command ships. The attack was led by a mixed fleet of human warships and stealth fighters, utilizing asymmetrical tactics that took advantage of the Zalthar's arrogance. The humans didn't engage in traditional space warfare. They used the debris from destroyed satellites and planetary wreckage to create a series of traps, luring Zalthar ships into narrow corridors where their large ships couldn't maneuver. For the first time since the invasion began, the Zalthar were forced to retreat. They lost several of their fleet's most experienced commanders, and the morale of their soldiers began to crack. It was a victory born not of superior firepower, but of cunning and adaptability traits that humanity excelled in. When the news of the victory reached the people of Earth, it sparked a fire of hope. For the first time in months, the human race began to believe that they could win. The Zalthar, however, were not pleased. Their empire had been built on the belief that no species could challenge their might, and the loss at Valiant Ridge was an embarrassment. They began to reassess their strategy. They underestimated us. With the victory at Valiant Ridge, the human resistance began to take the offensive. Lila Armstrong and her team, including her closest allies Alexei Voss, a former fleet officer turned tactician, and Dr. Aria Klein, a brilliant scientist, set their sights on the heart of the Zalthar Empire's operation on Earth, the Zalthar Citadel, a towering fortress that housed their command and control center. The Zalthar Citadel was impenetrable. It was shielded by layers of advanced technology that rendered it nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. But that didn't matter to Lila and her team. They knew that the key to defeating the Zalthar was to cripple their technological superiority. The Zalthar relied on their advanced AI-driven systems to coordinate their forces, and if they could disrupt these systems, they would bring the mighty empire to its knees. Dr. Arya Klein had been working on a project to create a virus capable of disabling the Zalthar's AI infrastructure. It was a gamble, as there was no certainty that it would work, but if successful, it would give humanity the edge they needed. The virus had been developed from a mix of human and Zalthar technology, utilizing their weaknesses to create a perfect digital weapon. The team launched their operation under the cover of darkness. They infiltrated the Zalthar citadel, using underground tunnels and hacked alien drones to avoid detection. As they reached the core of the Zalthar systems, they deployed the virus, watching as the alien technology began to glitch and falter. The Zalthar, unable to adapt quickly enough to the human ingenuity they had so underestimated, were thrown into chaos. Their once reliable systems malfunctioned, communication between their fleets broke down, and their powerful war machines turned against their own forces. The Human Counterattack was in full swing. The human forces, emboldened by their success, began to strike the Zalthar on multiple fronts. In space, they engaged in hit-and-run tactics, using their knowledge of Zalthar technology against them. The humans had started to learn how to adapt the advanced weapons they had scavenged, turning the Zalthar's own creations against them. On the ground, the resistance continued to liberate cities, retaking territories one by one. With every victory, the Zalthar grew more desperate. They had underestimated Earth's capacity for resilience and innovation, but now they were beginning to see the full scope of humanity's potential. Still, the Zalthar held one advantage: their overwhelming numbers. For every victory the humans scored, they were met with even more Zalthar forces, descending from orbit to reclaim lost ground. It was then that Lila Armstrong made a bold decision: humanity would no longer fight a defensive war. Instead, they would take the fight to the Zalthar's homeworlds, targeting their supply lines and leadership. It was a risky move, but Lila knew that if Earth could disrupt the heart of the Zalthar Empire, they could finally end the war. The human fleet, now growing in strength and sophistication, launched the first major strike on the Zalthar homeworld. Their mission: to infiltrate the heart of the Zalthar Empire and strike at their very core. Led by Lila Armstrong, the fleet traveled to the distant reaches of the galaxy, where the Zalthar had established their capital. The journey was long and perilous, but the humans had adapted, and they now possessed the resources and technology to challenge the Zalthar on their home turf. Lila's strategy was to hit fast, hit hard, and force the Zalthar to retreat into disarray. The human forces arrived in the Zalthar capital system with surprising speed, utilizing a newly developed form of stealth technology that allowed their ships to slip past the Zalthar's advanced sensor grids undetected. The first wave of attacks targeted the Zalthar's primary energy grid, cutting off power to their cities and military facilities. With the Zalthar capital in darkness, the human forces launched a full-scale invasion. This time, it wasn't just a fight for survival, it was an all-out offensive aimed at wiping out the Zalthar's capacity for war. Lila and her team led the charge, infiltrating the Zalthar capital itself, while the fleet engaged the remaining Zalthar forces in orbit. The Zalthar had underestimated the human will to fight, and now they were paying the price. The final confrontation came on the planet Zalthar Prime, the birthplace of the Empire. The Zalthar had retreated to their capital city, hiding behind their most advanced defenses, but Lila knew that they were vulnerable. With the fleet in position, and the surface forces already engaging, Lila made her way to the heart of the Zalthar leadership. Inside the fortress, the Zalthar High Command awaited, anticipating their final stand. But they had no idea what humanity was capable of. As the Zalthar tried to regroup, Lila launched a series of devastating strikes on their command infrastructure. With their leadership crumbling and their armies disintegrating, the Zalthar Empire fell into chaos. Their empire, built on the backs of thousands of conquered worlds, was now crumbling under the weight of its own arrogance. The final blow came when Lila Armstrong, with a small strike team, stormed the Zalthar throne room and confronted the Zalthar Emperor himself. The once mighty alien leader was no match for humanity's resolve. The Zalthar had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying for it. With the fall of their emperor, the Zalthar Empire was no more. The galaxy, once ruled by an invincible alien force, was now open to the possibility of a new era, one shaped by the resilience and ingenuity of humankind. The Zalthar Empire was no more, and the galaxy stood in awe of the humans who had turned the tide of history. In the years that followed, Earth would rebuild, forging alliances with other civilizations that had once feared the Zalthar. The lessons learned from their victory would guide humanity as they ventured into the stars, no longer a passive observer, but a force to be reckoned with. Lila Armstrong, now a hero of the galaxy, stood at the helm of a new era. The humans had been underestimated, but in the end, they had triumphed. And in the silence of space, humanity's voice would echo loud and clear, "They will never underestimate us again." Though humanity had triumphed, the aftermath of the war left scars that would take generations to heal. The Zalthar Empire, once the dominant force in the galaxy, had fallen, but its collapse had created a power vacuum. Various factions that had once been subjugated by the Empire now began to vie for control, and the human-led coalition that had defeated the Zalthar found itself under pressure from all sides. Lila Armstrong, now the de facto leader of the Earth-based Galactic Council, was acutely aware of the fragility of the new order. She had expected resistance, but nothing could have prepared her for the sheer scope of the challenge that lay ahead. Humanity's victory had been hard-won, and their newfound power came with a host of new enemies both within and beyond the borders of Earth's influence. While the remnants of the Zalthar military were decimated, many factions within their empire still lived on in the form of rogue warlords, mercenaries, and black market traders who profited from the chaos. The same ruthless efficiency that had allowed the Zalthar to dominate now threatened to destabilize the galaxy further, and it would require careful diplomacy and military vigilance to prevent another war from breaking out. "The galaxy is a powder keg," Lila, Alexei Voss, now the chief strategist for the Earth fleet, said as he paced around the war room. He had changed since the days of the initial resistance. The war had aged him, but his tactical genius had only grown sharper. "I know, Alexei," Lila replied, her face grim. "But we can't just sit back and hope everything works itself out. We have to rebuild. We have to offer the galaxy something better than what the Zalthar ever did." The weight of her responsibility pressed heavily on her. She had once been a military captain fighting for survival. Now, she was the leader of an interstellar coalition trying to forge a new peace in a fractured galaxy. As the war's victors, Earth had taken the mantle of leadership, but not without controversy. The Galactic Council, a new governing body formed from representatives of the liberated worlds, was meant to be a united front against any future threats. But the Council was deeply divided. Many planets had lived in fear of the Zalthar for centuries and were reluctant to place their trust in Earth, which they saw as just another potential empire in the making. "Humans have fought valiantly, yes," said Thralik, a representative from the Rejali, a reptilian species with a long history of resentment toward the Zalthar. "But do you truly expect us to place our future in the hands of a race that nearly destroyed our civilization not long ago? Your victories may be impressive, but they don't erase the past." "Thralik, the past can't be changed," Lila replied diplomatically, her voice calm but firm. "What matters now is the future. We have the chance to build a new order, one where every species can determine its own fate, free from the tyranny of the Zalthar or any other would-be oppressor." The Rejali were a powerful faction, and Thralik's words resonated with many of the other delegates. There was unease in the room, but Lila's vision for a galaxy united in peace was gaining traction. But there were other factions, too, that saw Earth's growing power as a threat. Some, like the Volstari Confederacy, were bitter over past dealings with the Zalthar. They had been pawns in the galactic chess game and were wary of any new power center, particularly one that appeared to be based on Earth's political structure. "You may say we can't change the past," said Valtor, a Volstari diplomat. "But history has a way of repeating itself. Your rise has already begun to resemble the Zalthar's. How long before Earth begins to exert its dominance the same way?" Valtor, you've known me for years, Lila said, her voice steady but tinged with frustration. You know I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in the ideal of unity. I'm asking for your trust, not blind allegiance. But the room remained divided. While some planets, particularly those that had suffered the most under the Zalthar, were willing to give humanity a chance, others stood firmly against the idea of Earth leading the galaxy. And so, the peace Lila hoped for was far from assured. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the remnants of the Zalthar Empire were not idly watching humanity's rise. Beneath the surface, rogue factions were consolidating power, assembling armies, and plotting their next moves. Led by former Zalthar generals and military commanders, these warlords had regrouped in the outer systems, far from the reach of the newly formed Galactic Council. Among these rogue factions was a particularly dangerous leader, General Volkar. Once a high-ranking officer in the Zalthar Empire's military, Volkar had managed to escape the fall of the Empire and gather a large following of disillusioned soldiers, mercenaries, and opportunists. He saw the destruction of the Zalthar as a sign of weakness, not the end of their legacy. To Volkar, the Zalthar had simply been too hasty in their ambitions, and now it was time for a more calculated, more ruthless version of their empire to rise again. Volkar's first act was to assassinate a high-ranking diplomat of the Galactic Council, an act of terror designed to sow distrust and fear. It was a message: the Zalthar were not dead. They were simply waiting for the right moment to strike. In response, Lila and her team ramped up security across Earth's colonies and began hunting down these rogue elements before they could regroup into a larger threat. But they soon realized that Volkar was far more organized than they had anticipated. His forces were steadily gaining strength, and with each passing day, the risk of open conflict grew. I've seen his tactics before, Alexei said as they analyzed Volkar's movements from their intelligence reports. He's not just a warlord. He's a strategist. He knows how to exploit weaknesses. Lila nodded. He's waiting for us to overextend ourselves. He wants us to be distracted by internal divisions and then strike when we're weakest. But even as Lila prepared for the worst, a new player entered the field. It was not an army, but a new technology, one that could change the course of the war. Dr. Arya Klein, who had played a key role in disabling the Zalthar's AI systems during the initial invasion, had been working on a new form of artificial intelligence, one designed not to cripple enemy forces but to enhance human capabilities and the galaxy's potential for peace. We've developed something extraordinary, Dr. Klein said, her voice trembling with excitement. It's an AI that can adapt to any battlefield situation, one that can predict enemy movements, optimize strategies, and coordinate fleets with near-perfect precision. It's a game changer. Lila, who had long relied on human ingenuity and adaptability, now saw an opportunity to use technology for the greater good. The new AI, code-named Aegis, was humanity's first step toward leveling the playing field against the rogue factions. If they could deploy it successfully, it would give Earth the upper hand in the galactic struggle. It was not long before Volkar launched his offensive. He struck in multiple locations at once, targeting key systems across the galaxy that had been weakened by the remnants of the Zalthar. His forces were massive, and the galaxy's military response was fragmented. The Galactic Council, still struggling with internal divisions, was slow to respond, giving Volkar the advantage. Earth's military, though powerful, was spread thin, and it became clear that humanity's forces would need help. Lila called on the coalition's allies, urging them to put aside their differences and stand together against the common threat. The time for political games was over. Volkar had united the remnants of the Zalthar Empire, and if they were to be stopped, every system in the galaxy would need to fight as one. It was in this hour of need that the Aegis AI was deployed. The new technology allowed Earth's fleet to move with unmatched precision. It predicted enemy maneuvers, optimized their fleet formations, and provided real-time data to the commanders on the front lines. The first battle between Volkar's forces and the coalition was a devastatingly efficient display of human ingenuity. Aegis allowed the humans to turn the tide in a way that would have been impossible mere months earlier. Volkar, caught off guard by the speed and coordination of the human fleet, was forced to retreat, his forces broken and disorganized. But Volkar was not one to give up easily. He had underestimated humanity before, and he would not make that mistake again. In the face of mounting losses, Volkar called for a final, decisive strike against Earth itself. It was his last-ditch effort to destroy humanity's ability to resist. His fleet moved toward the Sol system, with a full-scale assault planned against the heart of Earth's power. Lila knew that this would be the ultimate test. She was ready to sacrifice everything to protect humanity's future. She had spent her life fighting for survival, but now the stakes were higher than ever before. The battle that ensued was nothing short of apocalyptic. The Sol system became a war zone as Earth's forces clashed with Volkar's final assault. But even with his overwhelming strength, Volkar found that humanity had evolved. Aegis was guiding them, and Earth's forces fought with a unity they had never shown before. In the final confrontation, Lila herself led the charge against Volkar's flagship. The stakes were clear: either humanity would fall, or it would emerge victorious. In the end, it was not brute force that won the day, but the human spirit. Volkar, outmaneuvered and outthought by Aegis and Lila's tactical brilliance, was forced to surrender. With Volkar's defeat, the galaxy began to rebuild once again. The remnants of the Zalthar's empire were scattered, and the rogue factions were dismantled. The Galactic Council, with Earth at its helm, took its first steps toward a new era of peace and cooperation. Lila Armstrong, now seen as one of the galaxy's most influential leaders, stood at the helm of this new order. Humanity, once underestimated, had proven its resilience, its ingenuity, and its capacity for greatness. The galaxy had changed forever. And it was humanity that had led the way. They had been underestimated, but they would never be again. The war against Volkar and the remnants of the Zalthar Empire had ended, but peace, as Lila Armstrong knew all too well, was always fragile. The galaxy was still a powder keg, with old grudges simmering beneath the surface. Many worlds had rallied behind Earth, recognizing the strength and leadership humanity had displayed, but the scars of the past were not so easily erased. Lila stood in the council chamber, watching the holographic projections of the galaxy's various sectors. The tension was palpable, even though a fragile peace had been established. The Galactic Council, a body meant to unite the galaxy's myriad civilizations, was slowly taking shape, but there were fractures. The Rejali, though allies in the war, were still distrustful of humanity's leadership, and some of the smaller systems had begun to question whether Earth's dominance in the Council would lead to imperialistic control. "You're still holding the galaxy together by a thread," Alexei Voss remarked as he walked into the chamber, his tone wearied but sharp. "We've won every battle, but the true war is ahead, keeping the peace." "I know, Alexei," Lila replied, rubbing her eyes. "I just hoped things would be different once the Zalthar were gone." Alexei leaned against the console, studying the projections of the galactic map. "It's not just the Zalthar. Volkar may be defeated, but the idea of a galaxy ruled by one power Earth scares a lot of people. They'll never stop questioning our intentions. And some of them have good reason to," Lila said quietly. "We've done what we had to do, but I'm starting to wonder if that's enough. Can we really build a lasting peace?" "Perhaps it's not about what we've done," Alexei said, his voice thoughtful. "Maybe it's about what we do next." Lila met his gaze, realizing the gravity of his words. "What do you mean?" Alexei exhaled slowly. "Maybe it's time we stop fighting for what we can do and start fighting for what we should do." Lila knew what he was hinting at. It was something she had considered for months, perhaps even years, since the war began. The galaxy needed more than a council. It needed a new structure, a new way of organizing itself that wasn't based on old empires or the fear of domination. It was time to redefine the very notion of unity. The idea took shape slowly, like a seed planted in the fertile soil of necessity. Lila and Alexei began to draft the framework for a new galactic organization, one not dominated by any single species or planet. It would be a true coalition of equals, where decisions weren't made through the lens of dominance, but through shared responsibility and mutual respect. This new coalition would be called the Unified Galactic Accord, and its purpose would be simple: to ensure the survival and prosperity of all civilizations within the galaxy through cooperation, fairness, and the protection of every world's sovereignty. The hardest part was convincing the various factions of the galaxy to accept this new order. The Rijali were first to speak up, their distrust of Earth lingering like a shadow over the proceedings. Thralic, their leader, voiced his concerns openly in the council chamber. "You are asking us to dismantle everything we've known. For centuries, the Zalthar Empire dominated us with their cruel sense of hierarchy. Now, we are supposed to believe that Earth has our best interests at heart?" He growled, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "And what will Earth's place be in this new accord? Will you stand at the top, just as the Zalthar did?" Lila's voice remained steady as she faced the Rijali delegation. "I'm asking you not to trust Earth alone, but the principles behind this accord. We are not seeking dominance, Thralic. We are seeking a new way. A way where power doesn't corrupt, and where every voice is heard." The room fell silent. The truth was, none of the members of the Galactic Council had been able to shake off the lingering presence of the Zalthar Empire, and their fears were valid. Yet Lila knew that the only way to heal the wounds of the past was through transparency, trust, and action. For weeks, the debate raged on. Some species left the council in protest. Others remained on the fence, hesitant but curious. Slowly, however, the tide began to turn. They had seen the strength of the human-led resistance, the ingenuity of Earth's leadership, and the sacrifices made in the name of peace. As the Unified Galactic Accord began to take shape, Lila found that, against all odds, her vision was becoming a reality. Just when Lila thought the worst of the political strife was over, a new and more dangerous threat emerged from the outer fringes of the galaxy. It began with the unprovoked destruction of several border systems, whose communications were suddenly cut off, leaving entire planets in silence. The attacks were precise, brutal, and untraceable. The systems involved had no known enemies, and the weapons used were unlike anything Lila had ever seen: stealth ships with advanced cloaking technology and weapons that seemed to phase through shields and armor. The destruction was swift, and the losses were devastating. "We've seen this before," Alexei said, his face pale as he reviewed the data. "This isn't Volcar. It's something else." Lila's stomach sank. Something else. The words echoed in her mind like an ominous drumbeat. They had been so focused on rebuilding the galaxy, so absorbed in ensuring that the mistakes of the past wouldn't repeat, that they hadn't seen the growing darkness lurking at the edges of known space. "What do we know about the attackers?" she asked, already dreading the answer. Alexei flicked a series of holograms into the air, showing star maps and reconnaissance reports. "We've traced the attacks to a previously uncharted area, near the edge of the galaxy. There's a signal, a strange distortion we can't identify. But there's one thing we do know. This new force is an alien. It's something human." Lila froze. "What do you mean, human?" Alexei paused, tapping his finger on the screen, then projecting a series of images from Earth's archives. "During the war, we lost contact with some of our most remote colonies off-the-grid outposts established long before we first encountered the Zalthar. These colonies had been independent, operating in isolation. But several of them went dark after we started expanding our reach during the conflict with the Zalthar." Lila's heart raced as she studied the images. They were old colonies hidden deep in the uncharted territories. But there were signs of advanced technology, systems designed for warfare. "They weren't just lost," Lila whispered. "They were abandoned." Alexei nodded. "And now, someone is using their technology against us." Chapter 18, The Return of the Forgotten. It didn't take long for the truth to surface. The mysterious force behind the attacks was a group of human exiles, people who had been sent to the fringes of the galaxy long before the rise of the Zalthar Empire. They had been left behind, forgotten by Earth's government, exiled for their radical beliefs and experiments. In the isolation of deep space, they had thrived, developing technology and weapons far beyond what Earth had ever known. Led by a former high-ranking member of Earth's early space program, Commander Ilara Voss, the exiles had come to see themselves as the true inheritors of Earth's legacy. They had watched as the galaxy was torn apart, first by the Zelther, and then by humanity's rise to power. Their resentment had festered for centuries, and now they were ready to make their move. "You abandoned us," Ilara's voice echoed across the comm channels, cold and filled with bitterness. "You thought you could build a new order without us? Now, we will show you what happens when you forget your roots. This galaxy will burn until you understand the price of your arrogance." Lila felt a chill run through her veins. The exiles had watched everything unfold from the shadows, and now they had returned with a vengeance. Their technology was unmatched, and their resentment toward Earth ran deep. It was clear that they were not simply seeking power, they were seeking revenge. "I never abandoned you," Lila said softly, her voice breaking through the coldness of the transmission. "We tried to bring you back. We always tried." But the exiles were no longer listening. The time for words was over. With the return of the exiles, the galaxy stood on the precipice of a new war, one that could tear everything humanity had fought for apart. As the exiles launched a series of devastating attacks on Earth's colonies, Lila knew the time had come for humanity to unite not just against external threats, but to confront the ghosts of its past. The battle for unity, for peace, had only just begun. The shadows of history would rise again, and humanity would have to decide if it could ever truly overcome them. But Lila Armstrong, like the humans before her, refused to give in to despair. She would fight for the future, for the galaxy, and for a new beginning, for a world where the mistakes of the past would not define their future. They had been underestimated before. They would not be again. The time for the human counterattack had come.